listening to iCannabisRadio.com.
All right, you are listening to the Hemp Connoisseur Radio. As always, I'm David. Jason is not in the studio with me today, but we have another Jason with us. We have the infamous Jason Love, one of my favorite people in the hemp industry right now. He's been a great advocate for us.
Thanks for having me here.
Yeah, no, it's great to have you. He's the founder and executive director of hempcleans.com. And I wanted to ask you, Jason, so just tell me a little bit about Hemp Cleans.
Well, what do you really think when you hear Hemp Cleans?
Well, you know, I know when I hear Hemp Cleans, I think of all the things that hemp could do to help clean up our environment, the economic mess that we're in, our dependence on foreign oil. I mean, it just goes on and on.
So that's exactly it. That's exactly what we were trying to think about when we came up with the name, is it means something to everybody in their own way. It could clean your house. It could clean your digestive system. You know, eating hemp seeds, for example, can help in so many different ways. I really appreciate you having me on the show today. This is a great opportunity, and I know this has kind of been a long time in the making.
It has been a long time in the making. We've talked many times about getting you on the show, and you're just like one of the busiest people I know. So it's really hard to get you pinned
I think we all are at this point.
We really are. We really are.
Anybody
Obviously,
in this cannabis industry,
me,
the hemp industry, whether it's for social use or medical, it's insane how many hours people work.
It really is. And I think that people who like to think of what's the new term I'm hearing? Ganjapreneurs, in the marijuana side of the industry, they, the claim that marijuana makes somebody lazy and not very motivated, I think is proven to be very untrue if you're in our industry and you see how hard everybody works.
I'll raise my hand to that one. I mean, a lot of people know that I'm a patient as well. And in saying that, I wrote HB 1099, which passed last year, the Industrial Hemp Remediation Pilot Program. As well as involved in drafting the current bill for full industrial hemp regulation in the state of Colorado.
That's right. And we've talked about the phytoremediation bill quite a bit. I'd actually like, if we can, talk about the other bill, because that's a little more recent. Is that something we can talk about right now?
Yeah, I can't give you explicit language. It still hasn't been read across the desk, and so it's not public knowledge.
Right.
But in saying that, we still have a lot of drafts to go through to get it adjusted, if you will. So there's been a lot of input into the construction of this draft regulatory system, as well as the bill itself.
And on the regulatory side, I mean, we're talking about the same kind of thing that the task force is working on the 64 side, basically, or is it
I'm not going to say the same thing, because honestly, what we're talking about is a completely different animal.
Well, that's true.
It's kind of like getting drunk on vinegar, It doesn't happen.
Yeah.
You're not going to do it. So the argument that people are going to come and say, for example, smoke a hemp plant or a hemp field, it just doesn't cut it. It's a silly argument.
I do have a question, and I meant to ask you this actually before we got on the show, but perfect time to ask us. Is there going to be anything in this regulatory system to protect the farmers from somebody like the DEA?
I'm really glad you brought that up. And let me actually address that as a full structure, give you the outline. So HB 1099 gave us the foundation that we can do hemp studies in the state. We've been doing that since the bill has been signed by Governor Hickenlooper last June 4th, which happened to be the beginning of Hemp History Week, which was really cool.
A good momentous time to do it.
It's really neat how all the synergy builds on us. And so from that, we've had no engagement whatsoever from the DEA. Our view on that bill, as well as this bill, is that we don't have to ask permission. We are not a system of authority. We are a system of independent thinkers, an American foundation of beliefs, if you will. And so we see this as a states' rights issue. We see this as something that the DEA itself has already started to reveal that they treat it differently than they do, say, marijuana, spelled with an H in their documents, or THC delta-9 tetrahydrocannabinol synthetic version, if you will.
So I was not aware that the DEA is actually admitting that they're treating it differently.
They're not admitting it, but their behavior.
Gotcha.
Their behavior is treating it differently. So, for example, Alex Whiteplume in North
Dakota
has planted for 5 years in a row, and the DEA just comes in, they cut it down. They say, don't do this again. Well, if somebody was a drug dealer, just as I'll use another case in point, there were multiple shipments or containers, I should say, of hemp seed that were attempted to export to our country from Canada years ago, not too long ago, about 10 years ago. And they were stopped at the border. And the border said, go home, take them back with you. Now, in my understanding, if hemp is in the same category as marijuana with an H, then it's treated the same under the same law.
Right.
But their behavior is indicating another different behavior. So my question is, if somebody comes to our country with a load of cocaine, are they told to go back home and take it with them?
No.
So what we're looking at here is a lot of barking. And I don't want to provoke the dog, honestly. It's not my intent here.
Right.
I want to work with them,
Sure.
and I want to educate them. We, through Hemp Cleans, have been able to sit down with many levels of government and demonstrate not only that this plant has an economic viability, but it is a non-issue in terms of the fear propagation. It's about the children, honestly, is a weak shield to stand behind.
Yeah, I agree.
I think that people should stand up as adults and use real arguments. And in this case, there is no other argument. And so what has happened in the past, for example, Linda Parker, who was one of our teammates on Hemp Cleans, and a few years ago actually had a meeting at the Canadian consulate with the Canadian Mounties on the phone and Colorado State Police. And in that conversation, they were able to figure out what hemp was. And so there is no issue. It's a non-issue in our state because we've worked with education.
Sure.
We've worked with Colorado State Police and other law enforcement, not against them. I know up until now there's been this whole, they've been against us. Yeah, and I am one to speak on this one too.
Of course,
I faced 8 years in prison because of my medical marijuana charges, which I was acquitted of.
Yep.
But
Which was actually a big fight for patients' rights that you won.
That was another big one.
I just want to mention that, yeah.
That was another big one.
I know that's not why we have you on right now, but it is. It's a big story. We can have you on another time to go over that.
But you brought up something earlier about people who use cannabis as being a motivational or couch potatoes in layman's terms. I would have to stand up and say, I'm not a couch potato.
I'm not either.
I work all the time. I've accomplished a bill last year with many people. I work on presentations. I travel the states. I travel to other countries and do a lot of these things. And so I beg to differ.
Yeah.
Look at my driving record.
Yeah.
Okay, those kinds of things. And,
Sure.
and by the way, my car has a lot of stuff on it. And
Yes,
so
it
people
does.
see me.
It is.
And so the police do follow me around. I
Sure.
do pick that up, if you will. But mind you, again, look at my driving record. Excuse me. So back to the bill. This is really what I want to share with you all.
Yeah,
is
please.
So what the bill consists of, and you asked about protection. It consists of essentially a couple things. Up until recently, we were working with the mindset that we needed to create the structure on our own. I hate to say it that way. But what I mean by that is that we didn't know Amendment 64 was going to pass on
Right.
November 6th.
Right.
And so now that that's there, we have a constitutional protection. And so aside from the statute or the act, the bill itself. And so what that does is it gives us a shield, I'll say it that way, a little bit stronger foundation to work from, opposed to the federal law. A lot of people say, oh, it's federally illegal. Well, maybe. We don't know that yet. They say it is, but again, we don't know that yet. And I'm curious.
It's not clear on the hemp side, really.
No, but in saying that, it's not a constitutional amendment. We don't have a U.S. constitutional amendment that says hemp is illegal or marijuana is illegal.
Right.
Again, it's a administrative rule. We didn't even vote on this, folks. Right? Which is, in my understanding, that's
BS.
Yes, thank you. So, again, what this bill says is you can grow hemp. That's really what the first sentence says. Then it says, here's a regulatory system, not licensing. It's a regulatory system requiring registration. And all that is you tell us where it is, what are your GPS coordinates, so we can look at you through a satellite if we have to.
You
or
make sure it's
visit
actually
you.
hemp and not marijuana that you're cultivating illegally,
Exactly.
right? Okay.
And that we know what cultivar you're growing. So to us, this is more about data collection. We haven't grown this crop since 1957. We harvested the last one in 1958 from the research we've looked at.
Right.
And so that means we really don't know how it's going to behave. And that, in addition, and those of you out there that are listening, maybe you have an answer to this, but the Kentucky and Piedmont strains are gone. And so that means that we don't have a hemp strain to actually start with. There's a lot of ditchweed.
Well, that was what I was going to ask. There's a lot of Furo hemp out there that's still that.
I'm a little wary on terminology actually on this one.
Okay.
So I don't think it's wild.
Okay.
I wouldn't call it feral, if you will.
Okay.
Let me address that. Remind me to address that.
Please.
Because this brings up a gentleman by the name of Sergei Grigoriev, I think his last name is, from St. Petersburg in Russia. And he did a presentation up in Canada as well as in San Francisco at the events that I was at. I was a keynote speaker at the Canadian Hemp Trade Alliance about they call it the Colorado Project.
Sure.
And then also at the Hemp Industry Association. And Sergei came and spoke about his studies about hemp. And so he's followed hemp and civilization around the world and has essentially come up to the conclusion that without hemp, people wouldn't exist, and without people, hemp wouldn't exist because it doesn't show up. It's not wild.
Okay.
It has to be propagated by people. And so you'll see it where civilizations used to be, or you see it with simultaneous existence of a civilization. But you won't see it in places where there haven't been civilizations.
Okay.
Or at least there's no evidence yet.
Sure. I mean, it had to have been cultivated in some way, shape, or form in the first place.
It's a chicken and egg thing.
It is. It's kind of a chicken and egg thing? Okay.
So, Bill, here's what we're looking at is that the second part of this creates a regulatory system to basically protect the farmers under the state because it's now acknowledged by the state, regulated by the state, just like the medical marijuana regulatory system, but different. Because this is not Colorado's Department of Public Health and Environment. This is now agriculture.
Right. And that does create and the state is really recognizing the difference, correct?
Yes.
Good.
Absolutely.
Good.
We have support from the Farmers Bureau, from the Farmers Union at the state and federal level now, as well as, I'm going to say I'm going to be a little cautious on this.
Of course.
But most of the legislative body right now. We have Representative Coram, Fisher, Schwartz, Sonnenberg, and the list actually grows from there. We have the support from both sides of the aisle and in both houses. And it looks like we may end up with co-prime sponsorship, which means we have 2 in each seat, which is amazing. So up until this point, last year actually, we had a lot of support, but up until this point, a lot of people really weren't clear as to what hemp can do. And now we have the foundation for the phytoremediation studies.
Right.
So we've demonstrated that hemp may have an impact in fire remediation, in landslide mitigation, in erosion, in water issues, conservation issues, in sewage waste treatment, in so many environmentally sensitive issue areas, and mine dump cleanup.
Right.
And dropping salinity levels in soil, which is critical because a lot of farmland has been taken out because of salinity issues. So, and the list goes on. And this is just phytoremediation stuff, folks.
Right.
So what we're looking at here is that now we have a foundation of understanding and seeing where this goes, but we have garnered the interest of the public, of students from UCCS, from Fort Collins, from School of Mines, from professors from all over the place.
There's the first hemp class coming on in OSU.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that'll be online in March, I think.
Yes, I believe it is. Anybody can take it. Yeah, it's great.
It's going to be free, right?
I think it's going to be free.
I hope it's free.
Let's hope it's free.
Encourage the growth here. Here's what I see happening. People who learn this stuff now are going to be snatched up by this industry.
Absolutely.
We're looking for people.
Yeah.
And we have a huge team right now. And it's growing by leaps and bounds.
But that team, I mean, as we know, the size of what hemp can be in just Colorado alone, never mind our country, I mean, as big as the team is now, that's still just the beginnings.
It's infinitesimal compared to where this is actually going.
Yeah, it's still a baby.
The thousands of jobs, the secondary and tertiary effects, which I'd like to actually talk about too. But let me finish the bill structure.
Yeah, please.
So what we're looking at and we're proposing, again, this has not been read over the desk. We haven't gotten any feedback from certain entities yet, which is the next step. But that whole regulatory system is a sunset clause to it. And again, like I said, all it says is you can grow hemp. So as we move forward, the agricultural committee that's created under this regulatory system will then determine when there's a viable industry, whatever their indicators are. It could be financial, it could be acreage, it could be exports, whatever it might be. Then they're able to essentially create that sunset trigger.
Okay.
It may also be triggered by a couple other things, and I'll just mention one other for now, and that is that if the federal government finally wakes up. And there is a farm bill that Ron Wyden and Rand Paul are pushing forward, and I hope to see the language soon.
I hope it does pass, yeah.
As well as Diana DeGette, excuse me, is also pushing legislation, which is a states' rights bill recognizing states' rights surrounding hemp and medical marijuana and cannabis, So we have a lot of things happening. Now, what I have to say, honestly, is I ask everybody to pick up that phone, pick up that pen, write a letter. In fact, write a letter because it's more valuable to the senators and legislative body when they read it,
right,
versus an email or a fax or something like that, or a phone call. But contact your local representatives. Reach out. Tell your local coffee shop owner that you're excited about this. Tell your store clerk at the supermarket that you really want to see hemp bags instead of these plastic bags.
Well, yeah, and start buying hemp products that are out there right now.
It might cost you more, but I guarantee you're going to be
last.
happier.
It's going to last longer, generally speaking. And
overall, the quality is going to get there.
In my experience, and we talked about Dr. Bronner and his the Dr. Bronner's Magic Soap, and how I've been using it for years, and it's an amazing product.
Dr. Bronner's has 4 generations of making hemp-based soaps.
Yeah.
And that's something you can get right now in the supermarket. And it may cost you a little more, but you're going to really like that.
But it's
product.
concentrated, so you dilute it. I mean, I have an extra bottle that I had bought, an older bottle, and I always dilute it in. And I was just telling you, I used to do half and half water, half soap. I'm now down to 25% soap and 75% water, and it's just as effective. So even though you're spending more on it, it's actually, I found to be more cost effective than going out and just buying any body soap out there when I'm taking a shower. And I actually shave with it. It's my face soap.
Exactly, yeah.
You can use it for everything.
And that's the thing. And downstream, if that's flushed down the drain, it doesn't hurt the environment.
Exactly. And that's the other thing is I don't feel so bad about it when it's going down that drain. I'm not doing anything to harm anything.
This is something that's really encouraging to me because I'm starting to hear people tell me about using hemp in their days, in their daily activities. And I encourage you to pick up John Rulak's book. John Rulak actually is the president of Nativa. And he has a book. I really wish I could remember the title. I'm sorry, John, when you hear this. But it's basically a hempy world, I'll say, in my world, in my language. It's basically what does a hemp economy look like. And so he has a paragraph or two in there where he wakes up in bed in his hemp sheets and his hemp bed and his hemp slippers and walks across the hemp carpet in his hemp room and brushes his teeth with his hemp toothbrush. I can go on.
That reminds me of another book by Chris Conrad, Hemp Lifeline to the Future, in which he's doing that same exact thing and creating that picture.
Actually, it might be where the quote came from.
I think that is actually where, because I'm remembering that quote.
But I'm sure it's John that said that.
Okay. Well, we do have to go on a break, and we'll be back, and I do want to talk a little bit more about the hemp bill and what's in the future for hemp in Colorado.
Sounds good. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. We'll be back in just a moment.
The law offices of Edson, Maton, and Matz provide criminal defense, medical marijuana defense, and advice about setting up and running medical marijuana centers, optional premises cultivation operations, and infused product manufacturing businesses throughout Colorado. With offices in Denver and Aspen, we can offer assistance throughout the entire state of Colorado. Give us a call at 303-831-8188. That's 303-831-8188. Or visit us online at warrenedson.com.
Hi, I'm Josh Stanley.
And I'm Jesse Stanley.
Two of the brothers here from National Geographic's American Weed, and we'd like to invite you to come into our dispensaries in Colorado Springs. Come in for the most pure organic strain selection in Colorado. It's all hand-grown by the Stanley brothers, especially for our patients. So come in and visit us at our 2 locations, East Platte and West Colorado. And remember,
always be kind to each other.
Are you a medical marijuana patient or interested in finding out how to become one? Contact Mile High Wellness, where your care is our concern. Conveniently located on Hamden and Tamarack in the Whole Foods parking lot behind Proof of the Pudding. Mile High Wellness offers a wide variety of edibles, hashes, and some of Colorado's top strains. Mile High Wellness, where your care is our concern. 3525 South Tamarack, Suite 110, on the corner of Hamden and Tamarack. 720-382-8516. Mile High Wellness, where your care is our concern.
The Hemp Connoisseur is Colorado's premier guide to hemp culture. Our mission is to elevate the image of the medical cannabis and hemp industries to create widespread acceptance for all of the uses of the cannabis plant. You can find the Hemp Connoisseur in over 200 7-Elevens, your local dispensary, MMJ doctor offices, and tattered covered bookstores. Also, visit us online at thcmag.com or download our brand new app for your smartphone.
I'm Gary Johnson, and you're listening to iCannabis Radio, and I want to say, talk it up, Colorado.
All right, we are back with Jason Love. Wow, that came on quicker than normal. All right.
It's nice to hear that you guys are using that Gary clip. Thanks, Gary, for that, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. We love that clip, actually. We do have, you brought some examples of some hemp products in. It's kind of like a little hemp show and tell today. And, I'd love it if you kind of like would tell our readers, and if Chris, you can make sure the camera's on each product as he's talking about it. So we can get more
guide
in
my
depth.
hand if I'm off target.
Oh, he'll guide the camera.
It's a hempy day, right?
It's a happy day. So
whichever
one
I
the first one
actually,
is.
I'm a big believer in that one. I'll have to say that. You know how skiers, and I was a skier once upon a time, and a lot of times the racers would pre-visualize the race course, and what happens is they are faster skiers, and it's because the brain doesn't know the difference. And
all good athletes do that, actually.
Yes,
they do.
And business people, and this applies to
as
everything.
an actor, we used to do the same thing.
Yes, this is a key hint.
Yep.
So what I do in my life is I live a hempy day every day. I drive a hempy highway in my hempy car, and I believe that I see hemp everywhere, right? It's that. What was that thing? I see ghosts everywhere or something. I see dead people. Yeah,
I see dead people.
I see hemp. This is a positive thing. But I see hemp people. I see hempy people everywhere. So it just kind of carries me forward. And what's exciting about all this is now I finally have things that are real. I get to show you guys some things that I haven't really seen before. I mean, I've seen videos of this stuff. I saw the facility up in Canada that makes a lot of this material, but I now get to share it with everybody, and this is really exciting to me. So first off, I just want to share a picture with you that is actually of a hemp field, and maybe we'll put this on the website later on. But this is actually a hemp field right before the male plants release their pollen. See how yellow it is? Hopefully you can see the color difference in there. And so this is something that very few people see, and of course, it's something that we'll see more of. So I see this everywhere, right?
Hopefully. I'm looking forward to the day when you're driving through some Colorado farmland and you actually smell the hemp fields.
So I was just down in Walsh, Colorado this weekend. These are socks. These are 53% hemp. And these are interesting. Let me just address this. And do remind me if I forget about the Walsh conversation. I want to share that.
Oh, of course, yeah.
But these are antimicrobial. This fabric is demonstrated that has a antimicrobial behavior. In other words, some of the tests that they have shown, they've infected or contaminated hemp with pneumonia or hemp with MRSA, staph infection, which is a big issue in hospitals.
Sure.
It's where your skin rots away and things fall off, right?
Yes.
Scary stuff. And so I actually have a couple friends that have staph infection.
And that's a big risk with any surgery is that you could get a staph infection. Yeah.
So hemp has demonstrated that it could actually destroy those microbes. It has a crystalline structure. I found some interesting, and search this online. Look up the electron microscope image of hemp fiber. And you're going to see a very interesting thing in that. It's not just a fiber. It has a crystalline structure that actually sticks out off of the fiber. And from what my layman understanding is that actually destroys these microbes. But it also diffuses UV rays, for example.
Right.
So it can protect your skin.
So it's a natural sunblock, basically.
It's a natural sunblock. Yeah. It's a natural, quote-unquote, camouflage, I'll call it.
Gotcha.
So if I'm looking at you through infrared goggles or imagery, if you wear hemp versus cotton, you're going to have a lower infrared signature.
Well, that could be actually very instrumental. I mean, I can't believe I'm talking about military applications of hemp.
You got it.
But now you're talking about, with technology now, with infrared scoping and everything, and now you have guys out in the field, in the desert, and they want to keep a cool signature for those who have that type of technology.
It's in use today.
It's in use today already, of course.
I won't say who's using it.
And I know that they also utilize. There's a possibility of hemp for Kevlar as well to protect ourselves.
So yes, hemp has demonstrated that it has a very, very small angle, if you will, in its fiber, which means that its tensile strength increases basically with that angle as that angle decreases.
Right.
And so experiments still need to be done.
course.
These are future concepts, of course, but it does indicate that it could provide better body armor for many reasons. One of those being that it's lighter.
It's lighter. I was
It
just gonna say.
breathes, and so when you're in a stress situation and you perspire, it gets wet. It actually performs a little
Well,
better.
because every time I see,
in theory.
soldiers in the desert, I'm like, and they have all that gear on. I'm just like, how are you maintaining?
That's a lot of weight.
That's
gear.
a lot of weight at that. All that gear, and then all those layers of gear. I mean, it would be amazing probably to make it much more comfortable for the soldiers.
Yes,
out there.
yeah, and then there's an added benefit. So right now, from what I understand from the documents that I've read and from people I've talked to, that Kevlar can be penetrated with a sharp object, for example.
Right.
So knives are actually an issue.
Sure.
But with hemp, there are some indications that it would also prevent that as well.
Oh, so Batman's armor was probably made of hemp then.
Right. Yeah. You're probably right.
Yeah, right. Sorry.
It's a secret. That's why you can't tell anybody.
Exactly.
So I've been holding these things up.
Yeah,
These are hemp
yeah.
hearts. You can get these now. These are very nutritious. They're very high in protein.
Mm-hmm.
They're not a complete protein. I'll call it a
Essential
an essential food. I'll call
It's an
it
essential food.
because it has unsaturated fats, good fats in there. So polyunsaturated fats, no unsaturated fats. Excuse me. GLAs, omega 3s, 6s, and 9 in the right ratio that our body needs it. And so this is something that's really important to think about. So chia seed and flax and all these things, yes, they have omega 3s and 6s, but their ratio is way off from what our body is.
Well, and I think that's something a lot of people don't pay attention to, and I'm guilty of that as well. Is that it's not so much, I remember the vitamin C craze. Take as much vitamin C as you can, but if you take too much of it,
Yeah.
it's not good for you either. So, I mean, it's about the ratio of what's in your body. So I think that's really important.
So that's a big issue. And from my layman's term understanding, again, I'm not a physician or an attorney. I just play one on TV. Not really. But I think, and from what I see, and I do have a scientific background and research background in a lot of areas. And so what I see is that the belly thing, there's a lot of the belly issue, if you will.
Yes.
I think that's not only because we're not eating right, but we're absent of those omega-3 ratios. So I think keep your eye out for Hennessy Hemp, HennessyHemp.com. And that is a gentleman who's working on something similar to Supersize Me. So those of you who saw the gentleman eat all that crappy food and what happened.
Morgan Spurlock, yeah.
Right. So Morgan did that film. So Hennessy Hemp is doing a version of eating hemp seed every day. So
Wow.
what do you think will happen there?
And see what happens there. Yeah, I mean, and I love things like that. I got into juicing from seeing Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead when the guy juices for like 90. I don't do that, but he only juiced for 90 days, and you saw an immense transformation.
So this gets into like Gerson diet and things like that.
Yeah, exactly.
So this is another one of my favorites. Holy crap! I know you guys probably laughed when you saw this, right?
All right.
So this is something that has hemp seed in it. It's a cereal.
And you were telling me before that this is actually in a very interesting place that it's being utilized.
It's out of this world.
It's literally out of this world. So please explain that.
This is on the International Space Station. And I love that conversation because the question is, why is that on the International Space Station? And do they actually call it holy crap?
Probably not.
But I don't know. I mean,
Maybe.
think about that for a second. Holy crap. It actually has a different connotation, different meaning to it. If you think beyond that.
Oh, yeah, I know. I get
So, no, I know you get it, but those listeners out there might need a little nudge, right?
Yeah, maybe.
Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. So, what I think is interesting about this is this opens the door to the conversation with kids. And as I mentioned before, those who stand behind the kids argument, it's about the children, are weak, honestly, in my mind.
Well,
and so real quick, what I see is this, and yes, it is about the children. I agree, but it's not in the language.
No, but I think it's an ignorant standpoint to say we have to protect our children from this. I mean, we were talking about it more specifically on the marijuana side of the cannabis.
In that case, then let's educate them.
Exactly, and that's my thing it goes down to education, not hiding them.
So let me share something on that, actually, and that gives me something to really put in perspective here. I have a 13-year-old son, actually, from as of January 15th. Shares the same actual birthday as Martin Luther King Jr. Wow. And when he obviously goes to school, when he came to me about a week ago, he said, "Hey, Dad, we just took this test on drugs in school." I was like, and he's excited. And he's like, "I got 100% right on the marijuana part." And I said, the cannabis part. He said, yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
And what I saw in his eyes were not that he knew about drugs.
Mm-hmm.
He does treat that as a medicine. He does
Right.
see what I use it for as a medicine. He knows that it's something to be respected. But what I saw was that he learned something.
Right.
And he was excited. And so what happened was I actually gave him a pair of these hemp socks for his birthday.
Great.
And so he says, Dad, I'm going to go back to school and show these to my teacher. My teacher didn't know, because I told her what you're doing. She didn't know you can make fabric out of hemp. And so all of a sudden, we're not talking about just medicine. And this is actually not a medical marijuana medicine. This is actually hemp medicine.
Which one is that?
This is Dixie's X. This is
that's
actually now
Dixie
called
X.
Dixie's
It's
Botanicals.
Dixie Botanicals now, yes.
Sorry, I don't have the new one here.
Mm-hmm.
But I show that because we're now having a dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's exciting about this. When I went down to, and I'll bring this up from earlier, when I went down to Walsh, Colorado this last weekend to go speak with the farmers about industrial hemp, yeah, there were a lot of farmers that were like, oh, yeah, you just want to smoke that stuff. But once we started to talk to them and present, they were excited. A lot of people understood how this could help with water conservation issues,
Right.
with the Dust Bowl issue that's coming, folks.
Yes,
This
yes.
is a
Which,
big one.
just a little plug, Jason did write a great article on the Dust Bowl in our fall issue of the Hemp Connoisseur. And it's really impactful. A lot of people have actually commented on that specific article saying, really, is the Dust Bowl actually possibly coming? And I'd love it if you could kind of expand the answer to the people about that,
So this is something that's interesting because a lot of people think about the Dust Bowl, the original Dust Bowl that we wrote about, or that happened in our country in the 30s, and we forget about the one in the 50s.
Mm-hmm.
And we forget that this happens over and over and over again. And there are actually specific behaviors that are attributed to these effects, to the Dust Bowl itself. Whether it's slash and burn behaviors or things that have been done in the past or are actually still being done in certain areas. We really do need to look at this as a environmental issue and not as something to be afraid of, but something to become a part of. We all have to be stewards with the environment.
Mm-hmm.
It's our duty to help preserve and make better that environment, not to detach from it and say it's off limits,
Mm-hmm.
and to walk away from it and say nature will take care of itself. I think that, and I'll use this sort of quick example in an analogy. As a hunter, there's a story about an island that had a lot of deer on it. It had a big deer population, and they banned hunting in that area. And the deer population ate up all the food on the island and decimated itself because there was no human intervention.
Sure.
And we know we have herd control in Yosemite and Yellowstone and all these other parks. And so I think it's something that we need to take beyond just the parks. We need to take this into our urban and rural environments. It's something that is a bigger conversation. So hemp is something that begins that conversation.
Right.
So you bring up the Dust Bowl part of it. We've lost half a foot, maybe even more, of our valuable soil because it's just blown away.
Mm-hmm.
And those of you who may have been watching the news this summer may have seen the aerial pictures of cornfields in Iowa. And oddly enough, once in a while you'll see a cannabis plant growing in there that's bright green.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I think is interesting about that is that plant is maintaining the moisture, whereas the corn has evaporated, transpired all the moisture off. And so we may be looking at a plant that can help sustain the microclimate and increase moisture in the soil and therefore prevent these kinds of things in the future. But again, we need to be looking at this as a rotation crop, as a bicrop, meaning we put it in with other crops.
Sure.
That we use it as a boundary crop, a buffer crop to help prevent eutrophication or Dead Sea syndrome, if you will, downstream, where you get algae blooms and everything dies off. And so honestly, I could go on and on and on about those effects, but I think what I'm really trying to get at here is this is a community issue. Again, this is a stewardship relationship with our environment and our community. It's our responsibility to engage and do something about this.
Right.
Whether it's on your front lawn, and I don't mean grow hemp on your front lawn,
Right.
but maybe think about what you're growing on your front lawn, what you're putting on your front lawn in terms of pesticides and herbicides. But what are we wearing. So one thing I'm really excited about is we may find that this fabric, for example, and I'm just throwing this out there, but hypothetically, we don't know anything about this plant in terms of the real research. Yes, we know a little bit about it,
Right.
but we're only on the tip of the iceberg. But what if this absorbs carbon monoxide from non-point pollution sources like our cars?
Mm-hmm.
And so if we grow this along the highways, maybe we can help those communities that are built right next door from inhaling that stuff.
Well, and that's one of the things I think it's a great point. We're missing, 70 plus years of research that we've lost.
Yeah.
And that we're now having to catch up on.
So let's take this a step further.
Oh, yeah. And this is actually what I think is one of the coolest applications out there right now.
This is hemp block or hempcrete. I obviously don't have a whole block in my hand.
Right.
It's about half the weight of a concrete block or a brick in volume. And this is a product that's currently being used. There's a house in North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, there's one in North Dakota. I forgot about that one from Alex Whiteplume. Mm-hmm. And there are about 100 that have been built in the UK. There's a wholesale wine facility, storage facility in the UK. I can't remember the museum in the UK that just built a archival building, and they're storing paintings and automobiles and airplanes in there because this material is something that will balance the humidity levels. Mm-hmm. It will balance temperature. It will breathe, essentially. It absorbs sound instead of reflects sound.
Just as strong as regular cement?
Yes.
If not stronger.
There are some things that need to be developed.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you can see it on camera, but there are actually voids in here.
Mm-hmm.
And those voids can be filled, and then this block can actually be made even stronger. Okay. So there's still a lot of R&D that needs to be done out there.
Looking at these properties, these houses and buildings that you're saying that they built with hempcrete, do you know any of the numbers on how much did it cost for them to produce it with hempcrete as opposed to regular concrete?
Okay, that's a good question. And
you don't have to give solid numbers or anything, but
in terms of square footage, if I remember right, it was $100 a square foot.
And how much would it be for concrete? I don't know the pricing on that.
I want to say, or wood frame construction.
Or wood frame, okay.
It's going to be less.
Concrete would
be less. However, honestly, and I'm showing a panel here too out of fiber herd. Honestly, I can't stop at a number evaluation, and here's why: is that this material doesn't last just 50 years.
Right.
This can last hundreds of years if it's maintained properly.
Well, and you're possibly not looking at foundation cracking as easily.
Right. So it's showing that it could be elastic, potentially elastic,
which is pretty incredible. But also, when you talk about the insulation side of it, the energy savings on it can far outweigh the actual cost of the original.
Not just your energy savings, but the infrastructure to install in your home in the first place. Right. So the HVAC system itself doesn't have to be as immense, if you will.
Right. It doesn't have to be as powerful.
Then you take that even further into the fact that this material is antimicrobial, like I mentioned earlier. Mm-hmm. And so you're going to see houses built, and actually, let me refer to it this way. On the East Coast, we're seeing, because of Sandy, unfortunately, a lot of homes have been infected and taken over by black mold. Mm-hmm. If our homes were built with this, you won't see it.
You won't see it.
So, and there are other effects. This cascades into what I'm interested in is really the secondary and tertiary effects. So if we are using less, or if this is eliminating black mold, we've eliminated contamination issues and health issues. Right. And so insurance costs drop for some reason, or health issues increase.
Insurance costs should drop. We shouldn't say that they would drop it, but yeah, right.
So that's where we're going to start to see the effects, and so we're going to see a healthier population.
Right.
And let me come back to this hemp brick or hemp block. Right now, a labor person who carries this around all day, we know because of health issues and so on and so forth that over time they're going to have back problems.
Sure.
And so if this is lighter, you can decrease those problems and give them a longer effective working life.
Plus, you're probably looking at cutting the building time down.
Correct.
Because it's so much lighter and easier to handle.
Correct.
Yeah.
So now, all of a sudden, what you're impacting is the cost of the build itself.
Right.
And then it goes into other areas, too. Right. So I'm really curious to see, when I do ride down that asphalt highway, that Hempy highway, and I'm serious about that.
Oh, I am too. I agree.
What is it going to look like?
On your hemp tires.
Right.
Right. Well,
I don't know if we'll go that far, but yeah.
You never know. Well, we have to go on a break, but I want to go back to this conversation specifically right when we get back from the break as to the far-reaching implications of hemp and like the fact that we're not talking about just, let's making a better cinder block, let's making a better, how is it going to reach into everything? And you've already obviously touched on that, so I want to expand on that. So thanks for listening. We'll be back in just a couple of minutes.
Let's face it, rules and regulations are complicated, especially in the field of medical marijuana. Let Medical Marijuana 101 help you get through the compliance process. We can also explain to you your employment requirements, your employees, and your business. But our work doesn't stop there. Our experience in cultivation ranges from the design of grow rooms to the diagnosis and resolution of grow problems. Visit us at www.medicalmarijuana101.com or call 303-388-7706. That's 303-388-7706. Are you a runner? Are you a runner who supports marijuana legalization? Run on Grass is a group of athletes actively seeking to change our marijuana laws. We speak the truth about cannabis, bringing the message through our feet to new ears. Check out runongrass.com to find out more about us, our events, and how to join up or how to sponsor a runner. If you're in the Denver area, please join us for runs or start a group in your area. Running not your thing? Any sport can do it. On grass. runongrass.com.
Are you a medical marijuana patient or interested in finding out how to become one? Contact Mile High Wellness, where your care is our concern. Conveniently located on Hamden and Tamarack in the Whole Foods parking lot behind Proof of the Pudding. Mile High Wellness offers a wide variety of edibles, hashes, and some of Colorado's top strains. Mile High Wellness, where your care is our concern. 3525 South Tamarack, Suite 110, on the corner of Hamden and Tamarack. 720-382-8516. Mile High Wellness, where your care is our concern.
The Hemp Connoisseur is Colorado's premier guide to hemp culture. Our mission is to elevate the image of the medical cannabis and hemp industries to create widespread acceptance for all of the uses of the cannabis plant. You can find the Hemp Connoisseur in over 200 7-Elevens, your local dispensary, MMJ doctor offices, and tattered covered bookstores. Also, visit us online at thcmag.com or download our brand new app for your smartphone.
I'm Gary Johnson, and you're listening to iCannabis Radio, and I want to say, talk it up, Colorado.
All right, we're back at the Hemp Connoisseur Radio. We have Jason Love, our resident hemp expert, founder and executive director of Hemp Cleans, contributing writer for the Hemp Connoisseur magazine as well, that we're proud to have him on board on our staff on that. And we were talking about the secondary and tertiary effects of hemp products. And, and you started to touch on, the fact that utilizing a hempcrete block would actually could possibly help lower health costs, including wearing hemp clothing and, by eliminating the mold problems that people can have in houses, especially like from Hurricane Sandy. And I think that's a really big thing to talk about is the outreaching ramifications of starting to utilize hemp in our everyday lives. I mean, we talked already, we've already run over a few things. I mean, we talked about Dr. Bronner soaps and the fact that this soap going into our water supply is going to be easier to clean and it's not going to be poisoning it. I mean, whereas a lot of soaps, and a lot of people don't realize, is much harder to clean out of that supply. And of course we've gone over a lot of subjects, but I do really want to talk about all these, the tertiary effects.
So this has been fascinating for me. My background being architecture, environmental design, urban planning, scientific visualization for many different industries, cellulase, ethanol. I've worked in plane crash simulation, insurance litigation for various projects. That said, along the way, of course, we all hear these things: the environmentalist perspective, the extreme views, if you will, from some of these people, and then also the passive engagement views, such as people like Julia Butterfly, who lived in a tree for over a year. And these are things that have really been interesting in my perspective, because I agree to a certain extent with some of these issues, but not all of them, and not in full context. And so when I look at hemp and what it is allowing us to engage in terms of the conversation and also the research, and things like these materials or these beverages or the food or the so on and so forth, or I'll show you real quick, the potential for biomaterials in aerospace industry or automobile parts, as we've talked about too. What we're looking at here is something that is changing our lives. And what does that look like? What does that mean for everybody? Again, I brought up for a purpose, in context, the environmental perspectives of certain people.
Sure.
Some people might believe in global warming or not. It doesn't matter to me, really. The fact is that people are talking about something and they're searching for something. They want to be engaged in their environment. I brought up stewardship in the relationship. And hemp is allowing us to do that, to at least have that conversation and start to actually do that with home building, for example.
Right. Well, and I think what I think is interesting is by pointing out those, and no matter what advocate you are, whether you want to live in a tree for a year,
right,
and make a point there, sometimes I think what I get from what you're saying, Jason, is that sometimes that can be a little too narrowly focused. Yeah. And when you look at something, if you really want... It's still necessary, but if you really want to see, okay, I really want to make a difference, I think hemp can cross so many boundaries. And when you point out aerospace, well, now we have military technology looking at hemp and its abilities and what it can do to provide safety and better airplanes or better drones, rocket ships,
right?
Everything, spaceships, and then you're talking.
Hopefully we get rid of the drones.
Right, yeah, exactly. But then you're also, you want to talk economics, and you look at, okay, hemp in Colorado in the industry, and how many jobs could something like that create? So whether you care about global warming or you don't, everybody cares about the environment. Or the economy, and they look at it, well,
community growth.
Exactly, and I think hemp is that, I caution to say the word, but maybe I don't, panacea that does cover everything. It covers every aspect of that.
Isn't that what petroleum is?
It is.
We eat petroleum. It's our medicine.
Yep.
We drive it. We put it in our tanks.
We store things in plastic everywhere because of it. And it is. It's something that can take over for those things. There's obviously a long transitionary period in which you would do that.
And there's a complementary relationship. These things like cotton, for example, it's not here to replace anything. No. It's here to be cooperative with.
Right, because most hemp shirts are not 100% hemp.
Correct. Right. They have cotton in it or silk. Or
this hempcrete that you said, it actually has concrete in it as well.
Correct.
So, it shows that this concrete industry, they can say, okay, well, now I can start implementing hemp and make a lighter, easier to ship model, which, wow, there's another tertiary effect. It's easier to ship, it's lighter to ship. Well, wait a minute, that's cheaper on gas for the trucking industry, too.
And something can be produced locally.
And it can be produced locally.
To ship it.
Exactly.
So we can actually combine these ingredients on site.
Right.
And have a hemp block press and make those blocks on site. Almost like what is done with Adobe.
Right.
So what we're looking at here is interesting because it's taking traditional value and traditional methods, but incorporating new technologies to allow them to be produced at a faster rate and for an economically viable cost that's sustainable. And so, again, it's not about any singular aspect of an environmentalist issue or financial issue or whatever, but it's something that allows all these things to come together, and we can at least start to address these things. So yes, this product will sequester CO2 from the environment. It is a carbon sink. And so building a house, maybe that is something that you get a carbon credit for if that's something that becomes a reality.
Sure.
So these are things that I think are really exciting, and to address the tertiary effects or the secondary effects, in time, as we wear clothes, as we eat this in different products, we see hemp ice cream, for example. It's full of protein, and it's not a hemp ice cream substitute. It's something that actually tastes good.
It really does taste good.
It doesn't have that funky little texture that tofu or whatever does.
Yeah, and so, we're not trying to knock the dairy farmers out there of America who are trying to make money doing that. But at the same point,
but again, it's cooperative.
It is.
And so these are options for people, and especially for a lot of people who are gluten-free or have issues with allergies and so on and so forth, nut allergies. This is a product that may be an option for them, and it could really help a lot of people. So I think what I see, honestly, after going down to the farmers down in Walsh, Colorado, that town used to be a vibrant town. now I drive through there and it's empty.
Can you give a little background on Walsh, Colorado for our listeners?
Walsh, Colorado is in the southeast area. It's an agricultural community. It's in the southeast area of Colorado, right near Kansas, about 40 miles from Kansas. And they are dryland and irrigated farmers, if you will. It's all flat down there, and you have to drive a half hour to get anywhere.
Right.
It's a different way of life. And I actually love the rural community. I think, unfortunately, the word rural has presented a very negative connotation, or is presented as negative in media.
Right.
But what we're looking at is really the foundation of our country. And if you actually saw what that looked like, you'd probably feel the way I do. My heart sank. Not only do we need to educate our country about what's going on and how important these folks are, that's where our food comes from.
That's where our food comes from,
right?
exactly.
This is what we're talking about when I say the Dust Bowl. If that land blows away, folks, what are we going to do? We don't have any real infrastructure in this country left in terms of industry. So, again, when I go down there, I see hemp. Again, I might be a little out there, but I do see hemp everywhere. And they are anxious, if you will, in some respects, because this does show potential. And on that note, keep in mind, farmers in Colorado are very leery of anything because they've tried products in the past or seed in the past, crops in the past that have failed and failed and failed.
Sure.
And so, unfortunately, the land shows that, the town shows that, and their faces show that. And so, I don't want to be the guy that says, "Hey, this is going to save you guys."
Right.
But let's give it a chance.
Well, and we do have to make sure, and I think any farmer or anybody who does their research on what happened in Canada when they started the hemp production is they created this false boom. They said, "Oh my God, everybody wants hemp products. Everybody wants hemp products." And it was 98 that they started.
Yep.
And by 2000, there was people like, my crops are drying.
So they overproduced.
They overproduced for the demand at the time.
That actually, honestly, for what we're talking about in terms of new industry, I think is good. Now, a lot of people are going to be like, "What are you talking about? You overproduce, da-da-da." We know what happens economically. But again, this is a new niche industry that is just starting to burgeon again. And so when I look at what actually can take place, and we actually saw this in Canada, is it starts to allow for new invention.
Yes.
Because people start to go, well, what else can I do with this so I can make money from this? And so that, to me, was really exciting. And again, I think we can see that here as well. I don't want to encourage overproduction.
Of course.
And then the other things we need to look at, if you look at that the graphs of China or Canada, for example, is in 2008, the cigarette paper industry stopped using hemp in their manufacture of papers.
Well, and that's something a lot of people don't realize is that the cigarette industry was using hemp.
Banknotes.
Yep.
And I would actually venture to guess our own money actually has hemp in it. They don't admit it. But banknotes and bank certificates are actually a big market for hemp. And we see that from, I think, Romania and a couple other European countries. They specialize specifically in those paper fibers.
Well, if you have a banknote, it's worth $10,000 banknote or whatever it is. You want
better
to
be on nice paper.
Better be on nice paper and better be protected and not paper
acid
that's
free.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Archival
so it makes sense.
quality, right?
Yeah.
So this stuff does make sense. The drafts of our Constitution were written on hemp, and the final was written on vellum.
It was. Yeah. A lot of people don't know that.
On animal skin.
Yep.
And that's something that's really important to bring up. Actually, I myself fell into this trap years ago too. But there are a lot of myths out there.
I have fallen into those same traps. You're absolutely right. You get excited about hemp and you hear every great thing about it, and then you're like, well, that's got to be true because all this other stuff is true. And then you start sprouting out. Oh yeah, the Declaration of Independence was written.
Right.
No, drafted.
But there are things you can start to really say. The Great Wall of China, the mortar in there was made with hemp materials. The ships that Columbus sailed over on, as well as many of our ships, the USS Constitution as well, were equipped with rigging and sails made from hemp. The uniforms from our soldiers were hemp. The toolkit, I'll say, on these ships was a hemp toolkit. It was made up of seed and fiber. And so the theory being, and this is something you can actually go see in Barcelona if you go to the Hemp Museum that Todd McCormick and a handful of people have put together over the last few years. And I highly recommend you check that out. Even if you don't get to go see that, look it up online. The Barcelona Hemp Museum on YouTube. It's beautiful. It's in a
And there are a
palace.
lot of people, I don't know if you've talked to them, but I've talked to a lot of people who are looking to do hemp museums all over.
Well, there's the Kentucky Hemp Museum.
There is a Kentucky Hemp Museum. There's one in California.
There's one in California. There's one. There's parts of one here.
Yes.
There was one here, and then it closed, and then there's people talking about having another one. I personally have an interesting collection. I have talked to people and seen things in this state that have blown me away. So yeah, it's fun. Dr. Robert Melamed actually shared a little hemp seed jar from Ithaca, New York, from 1920 something.
Home of Cornell.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you dig deep, folks, and I encourage you to do this, dig deep and keep asking questions, because I bet you're going to find some history in your garage, in your barn, in your basement, in your attic, somewhere. And you never know.
Yeah. Now, you did mention Waldo Canyon, and I
Yeah.
wanted to bring that up because
That's real.
that's real.
That's so real.
Yeah.
That's now. That's real. Thank you for bringing that up, actually, because this is, again, this is something that we need to do now. We honestly need to get an emergency letter from the Attorney General, from the state, to say, do this research now and do whatever it takes to do this.
Right.
Because, again, we've demonstrated that we can help in all these areas. So I wrote an article about fire remediation a while back, and I think you guys are about to publish this.
We will be publishing in our April issue, yeah.
This is something that has attracted a lot of attention from very interesting people. Some of those are students from the School of Mines or UCCS, as well as students from outside the state, and then including people like Mark Udall. And I really appreciate that not only are we getting this kind of acknowledgement, but it's engagement. We actually are doing something about this.
Right.
And those of you who don't know much about Mark Udall's history, do look him up. He does have a wide range of interests, and one of them is environmental conservation.
Now, would you mind just touching on what hemp can do for Waldo Canyon from the
Yes.
fires, for our listeners out there who, don't know?
This is not about planting hemp everywhere. So this is actually a big issue for me, because we hear these stories in the news of cartels growing marijuana in the forests, which is extremely detrimental and damaging.
Sure.
And that's not what I'm talking about.
Right.
What I'm talking about here is planting hemp in very specific topographical zones to mitigate flood and erosion damage, and so that we could start to steer that water into specific areas so that it doesn't run on its own downhill and start major problems.
Right.
And carry off a lot of things as well, contaminating our and carry off contamination into our water, for example.
And I love Waldo Canyon. It's a great hiking area. I used to live down in the Springs, and we'd go there all the time. And I envision
See hemp everywhere.
yeah, seeing hemp everywhere. And obviously, I have a feeling there's going to have to be signs saying,
Don't smoke this.
This is industrial hemp. It is not marijuana. Please do not smoke. It is utilized for this. But that's going to create education.
That actually
for
came
people
up in
that are doing
Canada.
that.
There were some fields that were being vandalized, and it turned out it was the kids from the local school, and all they had to do was go into the school and give them a little tutorial about what it was, and it stopped.
That's all it took. Yeah.
That's it. It's very easy to do this.
Yeah.
But in terms of Waldo, let me give you the sort of synopsis on
Please.
this. Right now they use clover and grasses and straw that they dump from helicopters, or it's hand laid in a lot of areas too. But it is a short root system. It really, honestly, doesn't do anything. They know that. Everyone talks about this in terms of the science world. And so hemp has demonstrated that it can not only help in those areas, but it's also not an invasive plant. So it's not like kudzu that's going to start growing everywhere. It's something that, with human intervention, we can eliminate in a season. And that said, what we're looking at here is we are all responsible for this. We have decimated our forests around the globe.
Yes.
And there is nothing out there right now that we are doing to mitigate and to alleviate the damage, let alone try and replace or supplement the effect of what those trees were doing, the job of what those trees were doing. So hemp demonstrates that it has a high, really, radiation utilization efficiency factor. And so hemp may be that stepping stone to allow us to rejuvenate, stabilize, rebuild these forests.
Sure.
So I don't see it as a end all. It's just it's a step towards. But we can do these things now.
Well, it's much like, I mean, Governor Hickenlooper just signed a bill. I don't know if it's actually a bill, but yesterday in action to allow for controlled burning again, which he did ban for a while, obviously because of the dry season. But now they're looking at, well, we have to try to mitigate future fires.
I'm so happy he did that because that's something I actually brought up in, I think, the article about the Dust Bowl, if I remember right, is that these fires have been really hot because we haven't allowed
they have so much fuel.
The burns, right?
Yeah.
And so that has actually contributed to a VOC, a gas, into the atmosphere from the burned tars and stuff from the plants. And so that that vaporized particle in the atmosphere now has caused major problems because now water particles attach to that and never become raindrops and they blow away.
Right.
And so what he's talking about is another piece of the puzzle. This takes not just hemp, this takes a whole stewardship.
It does, and that, I think that was the point I was trying to bring. Is that's a stewardship, action right there. Yeah. And what you're speaking of is another side of that coin of the stewardship of the soil after the fact of the fire. Now you're trying to prevent fires. Now, what can we do to help mitigate the damage that the fires have done for us?
We have to work on both sides of this issue, and this is just one of many issues. There's water. What's interesting about this for me is as we've seen, this plant is a medicine. In terms of medical use, but it's also a medicine in terms of the food. So you eat better. We talk about preventative medicine. Honestly, what I find interesting here is that we have all been taught this term hygiene. In our minds, we think hygiene is washing our hands, right? Or don't cough on somebody, cover your mouth.
Sure.
Or don't sneeze, whatever. Hygiene, honestly, it's really frustrating to me. Hygiene was a Greek goddess, okay? Hygiene was not wash your hands, right? She didn't go around saying wash your hands in the Greek stories, right? She was about preventative medicine, eat right, take care of your body, exercise.
And is it Herodotus? I always forget the exact Greek name of the father of modern medicine. So I think it was Herodotus.
I think that's actually where the word from hygiene comes from, right?
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah. And then also he said, let food be thy medicine.
Or no, I'm thinking of two different things. But
and a quote from his, let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food. It was something I might be bastardizing the quote. Obviously, it was in Greek. So, hey, I'll say I'm paraphrasing some Greek.
We're doing the best we can.
We're
American, right?
I know. Even though I have Greek blood in me and never learned it, so But I think that's a really good point. And I think that we are seeing a shift, but we're in such a weird culture here in America when it comes to food and medicine. Everybody knows what they're supposed to do to lose weight and be healthy, but
that's what's so cool about this. This is not a diet. It's
not a diet.
This is the way. This is just going to happen.
Yeah,
people. Honestly, it happened for me. I see it happening to other people when they start to use these things. They want to use more. It's not because they feel obligated or they want to be like anybody else. They know it's right.
You get addicted to how you feel. I mean, that's why, like I mentioned the juicing before. I love to juice, and I don't like to eat a lot of fast food. But once in a while, I'm out in the car and I'm driving around, and I have to. And I'll eat it, and then I know the inevitable. An hour or two later, my body on the inside doesn't feel clean. I feel it feels different, and I'm like, okay, I'm not digesting good food right now.
Right.
And that to me is hygiene.
Hemp Cleans. Eat some hemp seed.
Hemp Cleans, exactly, exactly.
So I'm really happy that you are interested in this and are excited and supportive of what's happening, because the more we talk about this, the more other people will be interested in what we're doing. And honestly, that's where the change happens.
It is.
And just like we've seen in civil rights movements, in the American Revolution, honestly, is we can make a difference. And every one of us that stands up and says, yeah, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and eat hemp today, or I'm going to wear hemp, or I'm going to talk to this person, or whatever it is. Write that letter to your congressman. This is happening, folks. It's not when or if, it's now.
Yep.
So just get on board.
Yeah, and I know we're speaking. We have a nice listenership where we have patients, we have just hemp enthusiasts, we have people within the marijuana industry that listen to us on a regular basis. And when I say this, I'm saying this to all of you: go out there and start supporting hemp. I mean, if you're a dispensary owner, start bringing in hemp products to start making more awareness for it, because what we're doing is you're helping create a local economy here in Colorado, and everyone always says buy local, create local, let's create that local demand. Let's create that, Colorado hemp economy, because what will happen is every other state will look at us and say, wait a minute, these guys are doing something right. They're helping their environment. They're creating jobs. They're making money. They're creating new products and manufacturing in the United States. Every other state is going to look at Colorado and say, okay, how can we do that? How can we do that? And before you know it, hemp is going to be a national commodity again.
Keep in mind, last year this was almost a $500 million market on the retail side.
On the retail side,
in this country,
and we didn't make one hemp plant for that retail side.
And we're the only industrialized country that doesn't grow hemp.
Yep.
So let's do this, folks.
Yeah, exactly.
I really appreciate this. Is awesome.
It's
I'm
great,
excited
Jason.
to see this.
We're going to have you on.
I'll keep you updated.
Your
I'll
schedule is
definitely
so
keep you updated.
crazy. Whether you can come and visit us in the studio, which I love having you here in the studio.
Come on the road with me.
Oh,
I have
want
a
to.
mic actually that I can bring with me. If you want, I'll just go ahead and plug it in. We'll do a Skype.
And that's what my thought is we can start doing, little tours with Jason Love on the Hemp World Tour.
Come with me to China and
Exactly.
Australia. I
You'd love
can't
it.
wait to share that stuff with you guys.
We can't wait, and that's the great thing about Skype is we can get you anywhere. So, I just want to say thank you so much for coming on the show, Jason. It's always illuminating for me. As much as I look into hemp, you always show me something new. And that means I know the listeners are hearing something new. And so you're always welcome here on the Hemp Connoisseur Radio. We're proud to have you as a contributing writer. And again, everybody out there, go ahead to go to hempcleans.com. And please sign up for Jason's contact list. He will keep you up to date. There's another hemp meeting coming up.
Yeah, and on that note, we have a hemp gathering. It's not an official thing, but it's really any interested person at any level, students, just your local citizen, business people. And we have a gathering. We'll have one in another 2 to 3 weeks. 3 weeks, excuse me. So if you sign on to the contact page on hempcleans.com, and we are rebuilding that, but that'll get to where it needs to go, and you'll be invited to the next gathering.
It's great. I listened to the recording because I had the flu that day, and I listened to the recording of it, and that's going to be available as well for people to hear.
Yeah, we'll
if
get
you
that
can't
on the new
make it.
website, yes.
But, we're talking about so many exciting, inventive people from the industry all gathering together at the seedling of a whole new industry in Colorado. And it's just very exciting to be able to be a part of that or be a fly on the wall, whether you're going to be a hemp producer or a hemp purchaser.
Consumer.
Yeah, exactly. I think if you're interested in this and you want to see where hemp can go in Colorado especially, but not just there in the United States, I think it's really valuable to get on Jason's contact list and start making yourself seen and known, or at least listen to all these amazing people that are pushing hemp forward.
Here's what I'll say about that real quick is that what I noticed is that when somebody comes and just to listen, they actually hear something that triggers something else. And
Yeah.
so they do become an inventor. So you never know what's going to happen.
You never do.
This is a community thing, so come on board.
Yeah. All right.
I really appreciate this.
Hey,
Thanks,
thanks
David.
so much, Jason. It was a real pleasure. Like I said, we are always welcome. We look forward to having you on again. For all of the listeners out there, thanks so much for joining us today. It was a great show. Please tell all your friends about it. If you are a hemp enthusiast, let everybody know to listen to this show. I think you guys are going to get something out of it. As always, thanks for listening. Peace, love, and hempiness.
Have a happy day. Hempy day.